Hey everyone, hope you're doing well. Happy Wednesday. Today I wanted to talk about shattered souls. And I'm always, nowadays, I'm always referencing old videos because a lot of the older messages are even more so relevant today. So when you look back at certain messages and you're going through certain things in your journey, you kind of put two and two together as to why you were tapping into certain things. So as I go on my journey, as I continue to go on my personal spiritual journey, I'm seeing why certain discussions popped up for me and sharing with you guys. And I did a video a while ago about shattered souls, The Walking Dead, and how a lot of that has to do with the archetypes, archetypical spirits that are broken. And these archetypical spirits that we all hold at different degrees, the journey within that self is finding these broken pieces or these the perception of being broken and putting yourself back together again. So that in itself, when I realized that that was or that is the journey called life, it definitely puts a different spin on things and a different perception, because now you know what you're doing. You know what you're doing this for. So it provides some kind of reference point for your journey. And for me, at least. So when I, dived into just the family structure, the spiritual family structure, starting from one, splitting off, and then continuously splitting off, what happened as I went through that diagram, you start to see different aspects of self just splitting off, like split personality, creating different characters, different archetypes, both masculine and feminine, sister and brother. You have like all kinds of characters that are now interacting with each other on a level called life, right? So when the thing is, as that continuously goes on, there's a point in time where we forget. So we get lost in our roles. We get lost in these loops. And in my last video, I talked about the loops in comparison to the spiral consciousness, in comparison to the linear consciousness, and they're all pretty much the same, just from different points of views or different angles, all depending on where you stand, on whether you are completely separated from each perspective and you're treating them as separate, or if you're really truly integrating these different perspectives when the time is needed, because sometimes it is necessary to have that linear way of seeing things in order to build. Sometimes it's okay to see the loop and not freak out. When the person knows that they're looping, then it turns into something quite valuable. And then we get to the spiraling consciousness that we all hold, where we are realizing the different cycles in various ways, both expanding within that perception and contracting within that perception. So those are the three. If you didn't get a chance to watch that video, I'll have the link in the description, because I definitely recommend you watch that video as well, because it's definitely linked to this one. That video definitely, it was inspired by, again, my personal journey. And this is what I really wanted to get into today, in talking about not just the shattered souls, but the ascension journey and the descension journey and what happens in between that, because I think it's very important to recognize that what goes up must come down. And we don't really discuss that really in the spiritual community. Most people want to ascend, make it to the top, transfer over and, maybe kind of turn into some etherical ascended master. And that's cool. But when you get there, you realize that there's more life. So when there's more life, when there's more life after that, there's something called the afterlife. And that's a whole different kind of experience, because now when you go into quote unquote real life, and what I'm considering real life is consciously living versus not necessarily consciously living before that ascension. And I most definitely have experienced an ascension. I've actually experienced an ascension before I realized I actually experienced one. And I told this story to my private group, but it was a moment that I had when I was traveling last year, and I really came to a point of reaching what you would call the singularity. And at the time, I didn't realize that I was going through that. So I reached that singularity point of view in my consciousness, and I wasn't quite ready for that way of seeing life, that way of seeing just myself and the world. Uh, and it just happened to happen when I'm just like in an environment that is just like not familiar at all. So far away from home, and which says a lot within itself, because, you know, we have these discussions and we talk about home being where the heart is. So I was far away from home, which symbolically even means that I was far away from my own center, from my own heart. So being that far away from myself, right, and experiencing such a vast perception of what life is, it freaked me out. It really freaked me out. I saw everything, and it's hard to explain. And this is why, you know, talking about ascension within itself, it's cool, like, to talk about the steps, but you have to like journey to that space on your own consciously in order to really get it. So it's hard to explain, but what it feels like is it's like a vanilla sky moment. Okay, it's a vanilla sky moment. And for some people, that can freak people out. And for some people, it's just like, oh. So and that's like the either or, you know. And this is why preparation for this, and when we have these different kinds of discussions, it's important to really talk about the importance of preparing yourself and really being ready for opening your third eye completely and reaching that singularity moment within yourself and all of that, because there's a lot of inner responsibility that comes with that level of reaching yourself within that journey. So for me, it was a freak out moment, and to the point where there was a point where I was hyperventilating. I really thought that I was going to die. And this was supposed to be a vacation. Okay. And I was freaking out. And then I had to, you know, really coach myself through this, because I said, I've been through this before. There's a reason why. It's like there was a part of me that was avoiding this particular level of ascension, because for some reason, personally, every time I've gotten to this point, I've completely freaked out, and something probably happened in that freak out. When, you know, when we talk about like past lives or past experiences in record, and those records are sometimes hidden from you so that you don't necessarily freak out before it's time. So you're not necessarily supposed to know everything before you're supposed to know it. Okay, that's a whole other thing about the journey as well. We want to know everything like right now because we think we can handle certain things. But trust me, when you don't know what you are not supposed to know, be grateful for knowing what you do know when you know it. Okay, be grateful for that, because it's not really about knowing everything at one time. It's really taking your time and going through this journey so that you can really get the richness that comes with this level of really coming into yourself properly in a way. And I say properly because we're talking about shattered souls here. And I'm going to get a little bit more into that conversation in a second, but we're talking about shattered souls, broken spirits to the point where you're walking around and you're not really fulfilled on the inside. You feel that things are missing, like literally missing. It feels like missing body parts, but on the inside. And walking through life, it feels like the less that you have, the less essence that you have inside of you activated, the more it feels like you're walking around dead. And again, that's the video that I did about The Walking Dead, and talking about that. Is it feels like you're walking dead. Some people are only living in one chakra. Some people are only looping a very specific event for a very specific archetype. Some of it, actually shortens actual lifespans because of it, or what's perceived as lifespan. Some of it is prolonged, and it's a long drawn out loop instead. So there are so many different perspectives on this whole shattered soul thing. But the thing is, that's the whole point. So we don't want to necessarily, when we create puzzles, the whole point is to separate the pieces, right? In order to put the pieces back together again. And that is life. So sometimes when we go, or when we get so lost within our journeys sometimes in forgetting this, and this is a part of the whole thing, we feel like it's unfair. Who took my puzzle pieces away? Like, where's the rest of me? I don't understand this. This feels incomplete. This life feels incomplete. And I'm doing everything that I'm supposed to do. Who's the enemy? Is it the government? Is it like the aliens? Like, who's taking my puzzle pieces away from me? And that's how you start to feel. And then this is where some people come into spirituality, and they're like, yeah, I'm going to find my different puzzle pieces. And I'm, who do I have to worship? Or who do I need to talk to? Or who do I need to, be my mentor in this journey? And then we go through that external voyage sometimes, and we realize, oh shit, like it's something that, oh, okay, so you can take me to a certain point, but I have to go like the rest of the way by myself. And then that's like a pivotal point within your journey where it's just like, okay, from here, am I brave enough to really go within and do the rest on my own in the dark? Because when you start from that point of saying, okay, now I'm going to really make the journey alone. When you do that, it's really dark. It starts out really dark because you're literally now giving yourself permission to go to the very bottom of yourself, to go to the roots of yourself and start to journey up within. So when you begin that walk, a lot of the trauma is held in the lower lands of your body, energetically, even physically. Sometimes it's held in the lower parts. I just put out a chakra workshop, chakra walkthrough, because this is something that actually helped me with my personal levels of ascension. And I shared it as something, as a workshop, to where if you guys needed some guidance on that, you can actually go ahead and get that and journey for yourself if you need that push, right? But it's still something that you need to do on your own. So when you're doing it from that point, the first thing you come in contact with is the past. It's the past. And everybody's past, we all come from different backgrounds, but you'll still be confronted with a lot of what feels like resistance, because there's a lot of suppressed energies that are held within that root, within that sacral area of yourself. And that's usually it's the first shadows to come out of the closet for self. And that's where it's like most people, because confrontation of that part of self and of that part of the journey can seem very difficult, a lot of people unfortunately don't really make it past their lower lands. And I feel collectively that's what a lot of people are going through. Just people are forced to actually go through this because we've lived in times where there's plenty of external distractions. And right now, most people are on shutdown and quarantine, and they're having to deal with themselves to the point where social media is not even enough of a distraction to really stop a person from really confronting themselves. So this is getting really real for a lot of people. So if you're not afraid of the dark, it turns more so into a journey. It feels like an adventure more so. And for me, I've been very comfortable in the dark. I'm comfortable in these spaces, but what I realized about me and my journey is that it wasn't because I was taking pride of knowing how to navigate my dark waters. It was more so because I found comfort in my pain instead. So I enjoyed telling myself the same traumatic stories over and over again. I enjoyed making myself a victim so that there was some sort of reason as to why I couldn't move any further within my journey to justify my space and positioning within these lower lands only kind of lives, right? So there was just a lot of justification, a lot of delusion, and a lot of excuses made within this darkness. And to me, and I don't know if any of you guys can relate, but to me, that was a comfortable space. It was very comfortable to be in that pain, you know. And after a while, pain kind of turns into pleasure for some people, you know, and they really just sit in that space. So, in that, with all of that being said, there's a threshold to cross. And this is where you're kind of like having a conversation with yourself, like a real deal conversation. Like, listen, I recognize the loop. I see the loop at least. Is this something that I want to continuously put myself through? Do I want to continue to do the same things and render up the same results now that I'm aware and conscious? Because at this point, this is where it becomes insanity. So is this where I want to be? And is this what I want to continuously bring in every single time I give birth to myself? And when I asked myself these questions, at this point in time in my journey, the answer was no. Okay. I decided to become brave enough to venture through all of that pain and all of that stuff that was holding me back. And doing that, this is why, you know, these platforms are very, very important. Shout out to everybody who just, you know, allows themselves to be transparent and expresses themselves in such a public way, because this is also another outlet and a way to not just inspire other people, but to really get through your own walkthrough authentically, and just kind of like coach yourself as you're coaching others. And that's just been my journey, just period, whether it was with the natural hair or with life or spirituality. So that's always been my way of walkthrough. So I'm very grateful that, you know, I have you guys here and that you are just here to witness certain things, and that I'm able or feel comfortable enough to express certain things to you guys about this. So journeying up, you know, then the challenge, you know, as you get through the pain and you start to become more enlightened, because now you're really seeing what healing is about. You like real healing, not false illusionary healing, but real healing. So when you get to the real healing, you start to become more enlightened within yourself, which is a great thing. This is what you've been waiting for. You've been waiting for this enlightenment moment. You start to know more. You start to collect more memory within yourself. Walking through these lower lands, you've gained more wisdom about yourself. So now you're feeling really good. You're feeling really good. And as you go further and further up, what starts happening is you start to know so much. So much. You start to see so much, because now you're voyaging from the dark space to the light. So when you're coming into the light, there's like an overexposure to yourself. You're like, oh, everything is overexposed now. First, it was underexposed, and I had to feel my way through. And if you're more of a heart-based being, just naturally, that's an adventure. That's just like, oh, I got to feel my way through. I know these waters. This is cool. Like, I'll deal with all the emotions on the emotional scale. It's cool. But when you start to get to the point of the enlightenment, that part of the journey, you get to that point and now everything is overexposed, and it's not just about how you feel, but it's now about the information that you are processing. So now you're coming up here past the heart chakra, you're into this processing center of self. And now it's more so how you know how to utilize your heart space. You know how to go through and navigate through and like really express those emotions, right? But when you are given certain bits of information of your, like, just of your surroundings and yourself, how is your mind processing these things? How is your mind processing all of this information about you? And that's where it gets tricky, because some people are more mind based, and that's an easy way to get, that's easy. It's just compartmentalize and, you know, deal with this and deal with that. But uh, if you're not really comfortable in that space, and you don't really go to that part of yourself first, and you're not used to really utilizing this part of yourself, in this space, then it's hard, because there's so much light, there's so much information. What can happen is that this light can become so overexposed to self that you start to blind yourself. You become blinded by your own light, and that's not fun either. And I've definitely experienced that, become blinded by your own light. And in doing that, now at this point, you're at a level of enlightenment, you're blinded by your own light, and then you kind of forgot about your emotions at this point. You kind of forgot about the lower lands. You kind of left your shadows behind. You're just like, I don't even want to mess with y'all no more. Forget y'all. I'm over here in the land of the light. And then you go through this land of the light with no feeling, no heart, all this information. And this is where a lot comes in when we talk about mental health, when we're talking about how you're processing, your level of emotional intelligence comes into play with helping and assisting if you allow your emotional intelligence to come in. And this is where you start to become more apathetic within your journey. And I've had these conversations so much, because I've gone through many spaces in my journey to where I've gotten to a point of information to where I've become very apathetic to my personal life. So I wasn't really into, like, I forgot that I had a body, basically. Forgot that I had a body, forgot that I was even human. And I was just working from just, you know, observing my world instead of participating in my body from my like bodily 3D human experience. So when you get to that point and you forget you have a body, because you're so immersed in the information, you become apathetic, less emotional. Things don't really move you anymore. And that's where it can get a little tricky and sometimes even dangerous for some people. Because when you start to not feel anymore, then you're kind of looking at life like, well, what is this really about? Like, is this it? Like, this was the ascension. Now I'm here. I don't really remember how to feel. And on top of that, I don't think I can really deal with any more information, because now I see the syncretism with everything. So therefore, there's nothing really new to like grasp at. So what do I do? What do I do? So it can cause either a lot of anxiety, which was my thing, or it can cause a huge shift in becoming depressed. So it can go and shift either way. And this is where a super high intelligent being can really become self-destructive with all of this intelligence. And it's funny because someone in my last video, this was actually a comment from a person, and this inspired me to really come in and talk about this aspect of the journey as well, because this is where it gets real. It gets real in all spaces when you're just like really paying attention. But when it gets to this upper part and you feel like you have nowhere else to go, there are many spiritual, there's just many spiritual advices and communities and books and so on that tells you that the descend is not a great thing. When you reach up there, don't you dare descend. Don't you dare fall. Don't become a fallen one, right? That's when you become the fallen angel. You become evil, or you become darker, or you become less conscious when you make that descent. And I'm here to just say that is not quote unquote, and I hate using this word, but realistic. It's just not realistic for the human experience. The point of the human experience is to live through the many expressions of emotion and thought. It's really that simple. And to live through the expressions of emotion and thought, to create your world in that way, it's endless. There's endless code. All right, we were talking about codes on Monday. It's endless code. It's not like you haven't reached the end of yourself. And I like to talk about these parts of ourselves, the in-between, right? The top and the bottom, these parts of ourselves, they're like musical notes. And the beautiful thing about music is that there are very few like actual main primary notes, right? Points of frequency that you can still combine these beautiful notes and create limitless music where it still won't even sound. There's no music that can sound the same unless you're trying to make it sound the same. We can all create different music, different notes, different music within the inner verse, the universe, right? It's a reason why verse is, you know, hey, I have a song. How many verses do you have? Well, in my universe, I have one. In my multiverse, I have many. How many songs do you have? How many songs can you come up with what you're given? So if you're given these 7 chakras that have beautiful color, right, to these notes of you, then it's important to at least become intimate with these parts of yourself. And this is why, again, in my chakra workshop, every single day there's an intimacy with that particular chakra. And you can become very habitual with this, but get to know these parts of yourself on intimate levels so that you become familiar. Same as if you are learning an actual instrument. I like to teach myself, I'm actually learning to play the piano, dibble and dabble with the guitar, like all of that. And I'm teaching myself. Like, I listen to notes, I can teach myself the song, I can get used to the musical note within itself. And then now that I'm intimate and I have this mutual intimacy with this particular note, because I've spent time with it, now I know what to do with the note when I'm feeling it, and that's life. That's life. It's just like, oh, I know this note. I know that I need to insert this note in this moment in time right now because I know how to play my instrument, which is your body. Your body is your instrument. Your chakras, your energy points, all of that, instruments. Okay, different instruments. Or this one instrument with many notes, with many versions, all sounding different for different times and different places and different circumstances. So I don't want us to forget this part of the journey, because this is a part of the journey that actually offers life to you. Because when you are completely at the bottom of yourself, you're lost in your darkness. And there's a lot of delusion in darkness. There's a lot of delusion that can conjure up when you're not journeying in that darkness. If you're just sitting in that darkness and there's just like no movement and no activity in that, and you're just choosing, it's kind of like giving up. That's what sitting in darkness is. Just you sitting in a dark cave, just like this, and you're just like, I don't need to feel, I don't know. Like, I don't really know. It's just kind of like, when we're looking at the emotional scale, guilt and shame is at the very bottom. And that's where most people carry their guilt and shame, especially when it comes to the sacral. It's just like, if there's a lot of guilt and shame there, you're not moving past that. So everything, especially if that's the center of creation, energetically, everything you create is going to be created out of guilt and shame. That vibration is going to be intertwined with whatever creation you put out there, if that's where you're sitting. And that's at the bottom of the scale. Okay, even if you move up the scale and you go up to anger, at least that's some kind of fuel for something. But guilt and shame, there's no fuel in that. Guilt and shame actually keeps you listless within your own self, within your own journey. So you stay there, and that'll just, yeah, that's not a good feeling, right? And then you go all the way to the top, and the overexposure and the apathy is just, you're moving too fast for yourself. And now it's like, I've done it all, I've seen it all. So now what do I do? So all of this in between is where life is. So when I say the descend, it's, now there's a difference now. Okay. When we talk about ascension, right? When you're ascending, in a way to where you're not self-destructing, right? You're not like trying to get up there too fast ahead of your time, because when you do that, like I said, I had that situation happen on vacation. I was a little ahead of myself in that, and I didn't have strong roots. I did not like really ground myself in myself to make such a high ascent within my consciousness. So I knew so much. I saw the freaking matrix. I saw everybody and everything. I saw myself, and it was just, I had no grounding. So I was just in the air. And what that feels like is, if you ever watch that cartoon, any kind of cartoon where you're like tossing, or they toss like someone up in the air, they go all the way up, and then there's like a pause, and then like the cartoon character is looking, and then there's like this woo. That right there, that's what it felt like. And that's what that's, you're crashing, you're falling. And that, you don't have to fall like that. It doesn't have to be that way. Now, if you climbed and nobody had to like do that to you, now you got to make your way back down, right? So you've become familiar with the steps on your way up. Therefore, it shouldn't really be a problem to make your way down in your own time. And it's not just about going down, it's about exploring the crevices of every part of you. So it's not just an up and down journey either. It's not just about ascension and falling, or descending and going back up and coming back down. No, there's like sideways in all kinds of ways. There's expansion, there's contraction, there's so much in the middle of that. So it's not really all about that. And you can take as long as you want within these explorative journeys within. So you're doing that. So there's falling, there's descending in a way to where you're making that descent. There's tripping. Okay, so some people trip. Like they say, don't trip, stop tripping. There are people who trip and they fall. So they make the ascent and then they trip. And that hurts, right? That hurts. So it's many ways to get back down. But the thing is, when you fall, sometimes you don't want to descend all the way to the bottom immediately, right? You're trying to like, just like I said before, falling into place more so than just falling. Because if you fall, you have no control or navigation on where you land. So you're going to hit rock bottom. And that feels like a death when you do that. So this is why it's important to not rush an ascension process. It's a beautiful journey, but it's something that must be dealt with lots of guidance from within, and a lot of just collected experiences to push you through with substance attached to yourself. Because that's kind of like you building the bottom, this very strong bottom. It's that substance. Though all of those experiences that you wish you've never been through, but that's part of the strong like roots and trunk, that keeps you grounded there. So there's nothing to be ashamed of about anything that you've ever been through with that. And that's another thing, because there are some beings that are truly up there in the higher lands of self, and that's where they want to be. And then there's this prejudice that can be created from those beings who have made it to the top, where they look down quite literally, and there's a prejudice against those. And this is where you kind of get, it's expressed in the Matrix through race. Okay, I mean, do I really have to say it? It's very obvious. So you have the light beings who look down upon, and there's this prejudice against, and you know, there's that, and that's you creating a prejudice within yourself. Well, up here is better than down there. And then you have the aspects of self down there that's like, well, hey, we want to get up there. So there's like a self-worth issue that comes with yourself in this bottom area, self-worth. And when you have those issues of self-worth, you're never going to really make it up here. And I remember I broke down actually. I started crying in my personal group where I was talking about this, but I really, that was me. And that was an example of me actually enjoying the pain and expressing in that way, because what I was crying about was more so about you know, making it to the pearly gates of self and not being accepted in those gates, and then just being kicked back down, right? And there's some trauma attached to that. There are some past life experiences. There are some past experiences within this lifetime that reflects that within myself. So that continuously came up. But after a while, I was just like, if I keep telling myself this story, this is all that's going to happen. And second of all, there's no one else that has the key to my pearly gate. So wait, I'm not letting myself in. That's a problem. That's a problem, right? That's delusion. So you start to, you're waiting for someone to open up the gate. You're waiting for God to say, hey, you're welcome. Come into the pearly gates. Welcome, right? And then but it doesn't make sense when we're talking about our own journeys, when we're really pulling ourselves up to a point of worthiness within ourselves. So once I let myself into my own pearly gates, I was just like, okay, all right, I got it. This whole time I had the ability to do this, but something down here, which I was talking about in another video, the demon of doubt, something down here was telling me you are not worthy. And this is the story of feminine, right? There's a lot of guilt and shame that comes with the feminine when we even talk about sexuality, sensuality, just our nature in general is looked upon as, if it's not necessarily controlled, then you know, then there's just this, we can't allow this feminine essence to really be in her true essence wholeheartedly, because that's dangerous, or they call her all kinds of whores and, you know, whatever it is, because of just her nature in general. So there's a lot of feminine energies that are sharing that story, whether you've been through certain situations or not in this particular lifetime. There's still a connection that we have as feminine beings that still connects somehow to that story. So I feel like this is also important for us to talk about amongst ourselves in getting through that feeling, because that's not valid anymore. It's not valid anymore. The feminine, it's time for you to really own like who you are, because it's beautiful. And the same with the masculine side. You know, parts of our feminine have forgotten. So therefore, parts of our feminine has turned toxic against the masculine, has turned toxic against themselves, has formed you know, forms of jealousy and competition against each other, not seeing their sisters in other feminine essences, and really, you know, really seeing that connection. And it's the same on the masculine side. It's that lopsided or inverted aspect of, hey, you know, I'm either going to control or take and not allow or not collaborate with this other form of essence. So then there's this other side that doesn't feel so great either, even for the masculine side. So it goes either or. So this is no longer a pit about the masculine and feminine being at war with each other. We're actually not anymore. So this is a beautiful time So enjoy it. Like, this is a really beautiful time. And the rise of the divine feminine is real. Like, it's real up in here because it was so necessary. It was so necessary because all of the archetypical stories, when I talk about the shattered souls, like we see the shattered glass in the sky, right, in the cosmos. When I talk about these shattered souls, these are different stories that are told in ways that are externalized, so much so that the shatters themselves even become, there's like dust now that is being formed, kind of like a Thanos moment in a way, where it's just like dust. And you can't really, it's hard to put dust back together unless you can reverse time, right? So it's hard to put dust back together. Those are no longer puzzle pieces. It's no longer what it was intended to be, this thing called life, this game, this movie, whatever you want to call it. It's with dust. What are you going to do with dust? So this is important, because now this is where we tell our new stories for ourselves. And I think it's more so a story of love. It's a story of love, because and when you're living in duality, you have love and hate, you have, and I even broke that down in my little doodles, right? And in the other video, where it's a separation, and then there's this male and feminine essence that make love and war, that create the other essences. All of the shattered personalities come out or are birthed either through love or war. The war aspect of self creates split conditions or personalities. And creation through love actually creates something that has a creation that has a sense of whom and what it is. It doesn't feel separated. Even with parents, you'll see it different in children. If you have parents who, there was a traumatic way on how a child was brought into this world, whether it was through rape, whether it was through, the parents didn't really like each other and they had children, or if they really loved each other and had children, you see that it reflected in the creation within itself. So I think now that we're shifting finally into the love vibration, right? The love joy vibration. This is what we're shifting into. That's an actual space of reality. And I said this on my last video, let's not get it twisted and mistake love and joy for utopia or perfection, because that's not. There are different things that give us all, or make us all feel loving and joyful. The same thing or the same program is not going to put everyone in a space of love and joy. That's another religion. That's a religion telling you, welcome to my utopia. Everyone is going to be happy here. That's a religion, guys. Don't get caught up in another religion. Okay, let's get caught up in what we prefer to experience and what makes us happy, what makes us joyful, what makes us feel loving. And let's not forget expressive. I did a couple of IG TV videos where I was talking about not losing yourself in your self-development, but also artfully expressing yourself. Expression is key. How else are you going to really leave your legacy? Let's stop acting like legacy is not important. Let's stop acting like the ego is not important. The ego, listen, if you don't at least show some love to the ego, your ego will most definitely cause problems for you, just so it can feel special. Because the thing about our egos is that ego wants to feel special. Tell me I'm the one. Tell me I'm special. And if you don't, I'm going to create havoc and problems so that I can get you to see that I'm special. That's ego. So you have to make the ego feel special within yourself by giving it some kind of role, okay? Like something to play with. All right. So this is where that individuality comes in. This is where art comes in. Okay. I keep saying, I've been saying this for over a year. The Renaissance period, the golden era, is indeed returning. If you're on that side of yourself, if you are inside of yourself and you are able to recognize that, because this golden era is not going to feel collective. Okay, we're all dealing with, again, our own timelines. We are sharing space, but trust and believe, if I can be on one planet walking next to you and you can be on a completely different planet, and we can be sharing the same space. That's what it's going to feel like, or that's what it feels like already for some. So the golden era, that's what I'm here for. I'm here for the golden era. So where that comes from is being able to express yourself. Okay. And even if, let's say your inspiration is pain and trauma, because even when people make music sometimes, or they draw, or, you know, whatever it is, they write, whatever form of expression that is, even through speech, right? This is a form of art. Me doing this and speaking to you guys is a form of how I express my art. So even if your inspiration comes from the quote unquote dark space, express it in a way to where you can actually heal yourself through that pain. Express your pain in your music or in your art, but do it in a way to where you are shifting the frequency. You're not reanimating these frequencies, right? You're not reanimating these frequencies. You're not doing any of that when you are expressing yourself. You are curving it. You are acknowledging it, right? You're acknowledging your pain and all of that, everything that has given you your muse and inspiration. And again, you are giving thanks to it. Just play. You got to shift perspectives here, so that, again, because what you can do is you can create art that can, again, reanimate familiar spirits, familiar circumstances, just because you like being in that space. So be mindful when you are creating this art, if you like to pull from that side of your inspiration. Some people's muse is through love, right? So some people, if they're like in love with whatever, themselves, another person, there's like a drive that actually creates inspiration to create. So that's a person who's creating through love. Like, I feel love, so I just want to like create, and this is amazing, you know. So different ways, different muses. Okay, nature is another muse. You can just go outside and like so many ideas are just sitting out there in nature. You can be your own muse. Study yourself and see what comes from you. Your vision is a muse. What has not happened already, you can bring into life by expressing it through art. So art art is a way for the quote unquote, what they call I mean, it's so much beauty in art, that art within itself can become a weapon within itself. It can become a weapon. So art is a whole other level of expression, but this is why I say artfully express yourself, to make sure that you are being your individual self. You are acknowledging that individual self, and you are still allowing yourself to live within the collective at the same time. So it's a simultaneous reality here. Yes, you are in your own world, and yes, you are sharing space with others. And also think about, you know, and I know that I said in my last video, there are no enemies. And I mean that because I'm seeing that from a high perspective. And this is where we talk about that singularity consciousness, right? When you get to that point of consciousness, you really see that, oh shit, there is no enemy, literally, like quite literally. Doesn't mean that energies are not like coming after you or wanting to do things to you. Other people, you know, energies work through people. That I'm not being delusional about that at all. Let's not like get that twisted. But that's the difference. This is where I'm talking about higher perspective, being in that all-knowing space and not being attached to your lower lands with that perspective. Because if you're not attached to your lower lands in that there are no enemies perspective, then you might get ran over by quote unquote enemies, all right? Those energies that are coming after you. So it's not about being delusional. It's about seeing what it is and knowing what it is. That's discernment, and knowing what to do when it's time. So of course, you know, do what you need to do to make sure that your space is good for you. There are certain energies that I just don't personally want in my space. Now, when I talk about shadows, my shadows are my allies. And I keep saying this. My shadows are my allies. My shadows are not my enemies. My past is not my enemy. My different versions of myself that used to sabotage and creating self-sabotaging behaviors, she doesn't even exist anymore in that way. So she's transmuted into something that is helpful, that aspect of myself. So there are certain energies that, yeah, these shadows, that's my crew. That's my crew. Like, I'm not gonna, if you get rid of shadows, trying to get rid of these past or lagging aspects of yourself that, again, was a support system for whatever situations, whatever you were dealing with, then you're going to end up overexposed again. You're going to end up, you know, isolated again if you don't embrace those sides of you. So hell yeah, like, allies, not enemies. But there are some shadowy aspects that I just won't tolerate. You have that authority to say that. You have that authority, as I said yesterday, to be the author and to authorize these conditions for your own timeline, for your own space. Okay, so this is important. What are the energies that you felt in the past constantly showed up and caused a lot of disruption unnecessarily? Okay, so that has been one for me. Unnecessarily. When you sense an energy is on that wave, I don't need to learn that lesson anymore. There are certain shadowy lessons that we just don't need to put ourselves through anymore. I am all accepting. I am not judgmental, but I am also, again, the author of my space, just like everyone else has that right to be if they only knew. So this is what it means to just really put yourself now to be in that all-encompassing space of really taking things to the next level. As I said in one of my other videos, I'm really referring to a lot of my past videos because now all my past videos make sense, like today. So there's a video, you know, where I don't know, there's just a lot that is just being put together. There's this video that I made where I talked about BC and AL, you know, afterlife before Corona. There's this whole pocket of time that is now, it ain't never gonna be the same. It's BC. It ain't never gonna be the same. So right now, in this space and time, what you have this ability now to create your life. You don't have to bring in anything that you don't want to experience into this side of yourself. Again, not many people who are conscious and aware know this to be an option for themselves, but this is why we do this. This is why we share with each other. So today, start from today, clear your space. Okay, really be specific about your wants, your needs. Really say goodbye to what needs to be let go, but send it off with gratitude. Thank you for teaching me the lessons. Like, I see you, I love you. There is no ill feelings. Shadow aspect, no ill feelings with that. You know, so all of that. So you do this and you are literally creating your own space. You are who you are. So it's like having this amazing instrument and not knowing how to play, not knowing how to play the music, not knowing how to use the notes. So with all of that being said, I just wanted to wrap it up in a way to where I know that a lot of people are, again, on their way to ascension right now. They've already ascended. That's a goal, and that's cool. But ground yourself and know that you can travel in any direction, but up and down is a great starting point. All right. Travel up yourself, get to know yourself intimately, get to a point where you become self-sustained, feed yourself with your own light, power yourself with your own darkness. In the chakra workshop, that's where we start. We power ourselves up with that dark realm, that dark matter. We feed ourselves, okay, through our own light. And we keep that process going, self-sustained. So when you have everything you need and the puzzle is complete in that way on the inside of you, you become impenetrable. Because when I say it's like a spiritual musical chairs out there. Okay, you got spirits out here. Like, if your doors are open, if you don't have like all of your pieces on the inside, something's gonna fill in that space. Something's gonna fill in that space. And you won't be aware of it because you're walking around just not being self-aware. So yes, protect your space in that way by, again, gathering all of yourselves, accepting all of you in that way, knowing that nothing else outside of you can fill your cup. Now you can share with someone. My cup runneth over. I share. You know, I have something different from the next. You know, so that's a beautiful exchange. Anyway, I'll stop here. I just think that, you know, just going through my own personal ascension process, pulling all of myself together, because that's been the journey. I'm realizing, all right, I finally see, I finally know, I finally feel, so therefore I'm ready to experience. And that is not going through old experiences. It's actually preparing myself to experience something new. Right? So in that way, I'm ready for that. And yes, enjoy your coming into the new season, coming into, we have another new moon coming up. So again, it's great to regenerate and restore yourself during these times. All right, astrologically and everything. So anyway, I'll see you guys a little bit later. Enjoy the rest of your week.